When Kenya's political history is written, Kenneth Stanley Njindo Matiba will take a prominent slot as a reformer, a second liberation hero, and one who paid a heavy personal price for that struggle, his health. Born in Murang'a in 1932 to Stanley Njindo and Susan Wanjiko, he attained his early childhood education at the Kahuhia School in Murang'a before joining the Alliance High School. He later gained admission into Makerere University, where he graduated with a degree in history, geography, and sociology. He landed his first job as a teacher at the Kangaroo High School in 1960, and a year later bid farewell to bachelorhood, tying the knot with Edith Wanjiro. The two had met when Matiba was at Alliance High School and Edith was at the African Girls High School, now Alliance Girls, before they both proceeded to Makerere University. He was promoted to Higher Education Officer in 1961. But his career in the civil service would get a big boost when in 1963 he was appointed by colonial governor Malcolm MacDonald as the first African permanent secretary for education at only 31 years of age, a record at the time. After independence, Matiba was appointed permanent secretary for commerce by Jomo Kenyatta and later served in various ministries including industry and cooperatives and home affairs. In 1969, he left the civil service to become the general manager of Kenya Breweries. 4 years later, he jumped into the fray of Kenya's football politics, becoming the chairman of the Kenya Football Federation, a position he held until 1978. A year later, he changed gears and joined national politics. In the 1979 elections, he won the Mbiri parliamentary seat, now Kiharu constituency. He recaptured the seat in the subsequent 1983 and 1988 elections under the one-party rule, during which time he was appointed to head the Ministry of Culture and Social Services and later held the health and transport dockets under the Daniel Moi presidency. But it was the years that followed that thrust Matiba into national and eventually international limelight. In 1988, Matiba fell out with Daniel Moi over the conduct of KANU leadership elections. He resigned from his ministerial post in December 1998 and was expelled from the ruling party KANU. He opened a new chapter in his political life. In early 1990, Matiba joined a crop of bold politicians, including Charles Rubia, who was spearheading the clamor for amendments to the Constitution to allow for the reintroduction of a multi-party system amid fierce opposition by the KANU regime. Matiba and Rubia on the 6th of June 1990 announced their intentions to convene a multi-party rally in Nairobi on the 7th of July. A day that continued to hold a special place in the country's political modern history. The rally was banned by the government, and just 3 days before it was scheduled to take place, Matiba and Rubia were arrested. The law, known as the Public Security Regulations, under which they were arrested, allowed indefinite detention without charge or trial. Matiba and Rubia were held at the Committee Maximum Security Prison for close to a year. Matiba's family said he was denied medication while in detention and he subsequently suffered a stroke. But what he had spearheaded, the reintroduction of multi-party politics, would help end his stay in prison. On the 9th of June 1991, he was released from detention. He was flown to London for medical treatment over the stroke he had suffered behind bars. While he was away for treatment, 6 opposition leaders, including Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, formed the Forum for the Restoration of Democracy, FORD, in August 1991. It was, however, outlawed by the government, but was registered 4 months later following international pressure. As the multi-party wave hit the country, Matiba returned home on the 2nd of May 1992 after an 11-month stay in London. To a hero's reception that must have convinced him to set his eyes on bigger things.
I recovered from that sickness. If it had not been for you, I would have died a long time ago because I was very, very sick.
He joined Ford, but this massive opposition grouping soon split into two after the leaders failed to agree on the method for nominating a presidential candidate. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga's faction was renamed Ford Kenya, while Matiba took up the other half of the outfit that was now called Ford Asili.
I would like to tell you that I am going to stand as a candidate for the presidency of this country.
He became Ford Asili's presidential flag bearer in the country's first multi-party elections in 1992. His bid saw a controversial promise to kick Kenyans of Indian origin out of the country. But he would only manage a second-place finish after Daniel Moi. He, however, recaptured the Kiharu parliamentary seat, but refused to recognize Moi's victory. Matiba sought redress in court, where he filed the country's first-ever presidential election petition. The Matiba versus Moi case was dismissed by Justice Riaga Amolo, forcing Matiba to settle for leader of official opposition, a title he held until the 1997 general election. Matiba refused to take part in the 1997 polls, citing what he saw as the lack of a free electoral process, and publicly banned his voter's card.
I will not support anything to do with that election. No. And I'm asking all the people of Kenya to do the same.
He later re-registered as a voter and formed Saba Saba Asili, which never made any meaningful impact. In 2000, he told the story of his life when he launched his autobiography, Aiming High, The Story of My Life. The squash player kept off the political scene in the 2002 elections, which saw the National Rainbow Coalition, with Mwai Kibaki as its flag bearer, dislodge KANU from power. The once robust politician who climbed Mount Kenya faded from the public limelight as he battled ill health, believed to have been triggered by his detention. But he tried to make what would turn out to be a feeble comeback in the race for State House in the infamous 2007 elections. Vying on a Saba Saba Asili ticket, he was among 9 candidates who sought to replace Mwai Kibaki at the famous address. He garnered a paltry 8,046 votes, 0.08% of the votes. The father of 5, who founded the Kenatco Transport Company, established himself as a prominent businessman with interest in the hospitality industry, private schools, real estate, and horticulture. He also founded the People newspaper, which was in the 90s considered a bold newspaper critical of the government. But his fortunes dwindled in the later years of his life. He was forced to fight for control of his hotel, business, and school over claims of an outstanding debt. Matiba made a public appearance in Murang'a in May 2016 during the opening of the Kenneth Matiba Eye and Dental Hospital. The hospital named in honor of the man who will go down in history as a trailblazer in independent Kenya and fierce fighter for the country's second liberation, who never enjoyed the true fruits of that struggle. Rita Tinina, KTN News.